The purpose of the public comment session is to give residents of Manchester the opportunity to address the board. All people wishing to speak must sign up with their name and address and topic prior to 7 p.m. Once called, they will have up to 3 minutes to speak, and any comments must be directed to the chair and conclude when their time is up. If the clerk calls their name and they are not present to speak, they will not be given a second opportunity. Any resident wishing to speak will come forward to the nearest microphone, clearly state their name and address when recognized, and give their comments.
Mackenzie Verdner, followed by Deb Rue.
Good evening, board. My name is Mackenzie Verdnier. I live at 539 Silver Street. Tonight I am speaking, the students from the Young Organizers United wanted to be here tonight, but they are studying for exams, so I am here speaking on their behalf. So, they are worried and scared and confused. So, regarding the budget, as we know, we all remember what happened on the 15th. And so we're getting rid of teachers through attrition and not through layoffs. Okay, great. But what happens when the teacher who runs my favorite club or my favorite sport leaves? Well, that club won't run anymore. Okay, great. Well, what about the bathrooms? What are going to be done about that? Well, the Apple level or the level of cleaning will be reduced. So the 3 bathrooms that are closed at West High School may or may not get cleaned. Okay, great. Our students' biggest concerns revolve around the cleanliness of the facilities and the engagement, the 2 things, or more than 2 things that are on the chopping block. Those are the main things that the students wanted to express to you, and now this is what I have to say. If the district were to become a city department like what I saw proposed last meeting, what are you going to do to make sure that the students are being heard? If it was up to you, how are you making sure that the students' choices are being considered when you're making these decisions? So far, the only aldermen that have taken the time to meet with the students are Pat Long and Ross Terrio. They've taken the time to explain the nuances of the budget process. Contrary to popular belief, there's no one here indoctrinating our children. I'm the one who runs the program, Mackenzie Verdnier. I am the coordinator for YRU. That is my paid position. I only know so much. I graduated high school last year. I only know what I have been taught, and no one has taught me anything. So what are you going to do to teach me and the rest of the students as to what is going on in our city? We are begging to know, and we want to be involved and as engaged as possible. And the other thing I have to say is, like I said in my original testimony, it may not be increasing the tax cap, but if the city department, or if the school district were to become a department of the city, then how can we use other city resources to make sure that the needs of our students are met? Just something to think about. Thank you for your time.
Deb Rue, followed by Kathleen Carswell.
Thank you, Mayor and Aldermen, for having me again. I wasn't here at the last meeting about the budget, so I just wanted to voice my overall concern. I did send you guys all an email to look at as well, but I'm asking you to, instead of just going ahead and raising taxes and putting more money into the school budget, like the woman just was saying before, I think it would behoove us all to just go in and look deeper into where our money is going, how it's being spent, what is being taught to our kids, how are they being taught, because what I've still found online is that our students are still in the bottom of the 50th percentile for reading and math, 28% reading, 16% math, and our budget is, from what I saw for 2024 to 2025, was $227 million. That's an awful lot of money. I can't even fathom that amount. So I'm just asking you guys to really look into it and see what can be done to kind of save costs or use the money in better ways and find out why our kids aren't learning what they're supposed to be learning. And my favorite book that I keep sharing with you guys, The Monument to the Forefathers Guidebook, I just wanted to quickly read what they did back in the day when our forefathers are here. The education of children. There was no formal schools in the early years of Plymouth Colony, and children were educated primarily at home or with members of another family. The family unit acted as a school as each child's education began at the mother's knee and often ended in the cornfield or barn by the father's side. Following the wisdom of Scripture, the Pilgrims believed the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, Proverbs 1:7. They accepted their God-given roles as parents to instill moral virtues in their children and impart practical skills that would enable them to be self-sufficient as they grew older. In the early 17th century, one of the most widely read books on parenting was called A Godly Form of Household Government. This popular guide captured the goal of Pilgrims' parents to instruct their children in the principles of religion, good manners, and civil behavior, to instill in them reverence for their elders and superiors, to bring them up in some lawful and gainful calling, to teach them to read and write for both worldly and spiritual ends. For the Pilgrims, the greatest aim of literacy was to enable their children to read so they could understand and interpret Scripture for themselves. Gathered around the family Bible, parents would help a child sound out letters and syllables phonetically,
30 seconds.
reciting passages of Scriptures out loud until the connection between the oral and written words eventually were understood. Even young children were included in family devotions and grew up hearing rich stories and moral lessons of Scripture. Together as a family, the Bible was read, recited, and quoted and consulted, committed to memory, and constantly searched for meaning each day in the home. The process of instilling literacy, morals, and manners into children were incorporated into the daily routines of life. Armed with love and discipline, colonial mothers often achieved
3
more than our
minutes.
modern-day elementary schools with their federally funded programs and education specialists. These colonial mothers used simple, time-tested methods and instruction mixed with plain, old-fashioned hard work. So I just thought that may be something that we want to consider as we make our decisions as well. Thank you.
Kathleen Carswell, followed by Mark Hayward.
Good evening. I'm back again. I took the winter off, hoping that would be my last time to have to come down here, but apparently not. Unfortunately, I got quite a few issues. Mayor, I've asked back in July of last year if I could sit down and meet with you for at least a half an hour. I still haven't got a phone call, text message, nothing. It took me 3.5 years to get Mayor Craig to sit down, and that's because I had 3 shootings in my neighborhood. And to me, that was unacceptable. And I am begging, because I got some ideas for the city that maybe you could, at least listen to and hear. And the other issue I have, I speak for quite a few elderly people in my neighborhood, because I've lived there now 35 to 40 years where I am. And I grew up 3 streets over, so basically 63 years I've lived in Manchester out of my 65. And the question is brought to me a lot is the safety in our neighborhood. I call parking, I get excellent help in parking department, excellent help in the highway department, very poor help with the police department. Unless it's something exciting, they'll show up. Otherwise, we get no help. And I'm not asking to come with lights and sirens for a parking ticket. We do have parking issues. Parking department told us that if we have issues after their time, when they're off, to please call the police department and on the non-emergency line and let them know that there's an issue. It's never addressed. They drive right by. I can't tell you how many police officers I've seen go by. Apparently, I don't know if they don't want to write tickets or what the issue is, but that should be addressed also. I'd like, to be able to give some of my neighbors some good news. And also, we're having an increase of the homeless up in my neighborhood, which we never usually have a problem. I usually have the ladies of the evening, I'll call them, because I'm getting old, I guess. I've had that issue. It took me 25 years to move them 2 blocks. They stayed away. Now we got the problems with the drugs and the homeless. I get spit at, I get sworn at, I get pushed, I get things thrown at me. I've been told to go blank myself, and I asked them politely to leave.
30 seconds.
So what more can I do? We need some help. and we need to get some things addressed. Would be quite important in my neighborhood. It would be nice to know. And also, just a quick brief thing, if we can get Hunt's Pool redone, back up, brand new, Mayor Craig promised that when she was in, to me personally, that she was going to have Hunt's Pool redone for the inner city. We do not have that done yet. We have a splash pad. That's not going to be acceptable for that, and that shouldn't be acceptable for a
3
city our
minutes.
size. Thank you.
Mark Hayward, followed by Stan Garrity.
Mr. Mayor, Aldermen, Alderwomen, my name is Mark Hayward. I live at 302 Prospect Street. I want to start by thanking you for being Alderman and Mayor. It's a lot of responsibilities you take on. And I'm here to talk about Rule 3 in your rules for these meetings. And that's one responsibility you don't have to take on, which is speech police. Now, you might say that's part of my job. I signed up for it. If you think that Rule 3 is the wrong way to go about it, terms like profanity, vulgarity, civil language, they're vague, they're ambiguous, they're open to interpretation. What's profane? The F word, I think we could all say that is probably GD, but then there's a lot of gray. Let me give you some examples. A person who talks here on a regular basis comes up here, his first name could qualify as a profanity. A few months ago, another guy who speaks here, Glenn, was up here. I remember because I was here, and he used the word poo. He was describing what was coming out of his sewer pipes into his sink. Now, what if he had used, Glenn's a stand-up guy, but what if he used the CR word or the SH word? And you shut him down, right? You'd be saying that, hey, gutter language is more important than gutter-borne diseases. Let me give you another a possible hypothetical. Someone comes in and he just praises the DPW. Damn good bunch of guys. They work hard. The city streets are in great shape. Can't say enough about them. Then 2 weeks later, someone else comes in and says the exact opposite. They're lazy, they're incompetent, they're corrupt, slurs, he uses slurs, profanities, and you shut him down. Well, that's a problem because it's both are political speech, both are commenting on a city function, but you're allowing complimentary speech, but censoring critical speech, right? If you pass the committee's recommendations for Rule 3, I think any profanity or vulgarities will be rare. Most Manchester people are respectful, like the people who have come up tonight. They honor this place, right? Your good behavior, they model your good behavior. And I'd encourage you in your introduction to encourage civil language and civil speech. But
30 seconds.
What if the worst happens and someone starts rambling and starts swearing and terrible stuff, right? Well, the mayor can still ask him to stop. I wouldn't be against you turning off the TV feed. And if he continues on, well, he can be removed, right? The actions can be taken. We at the New England First Amendment Coalition encourage you to adopt the changes recommended by the Committee on Administration and Information Systems. Thank you.
Stan Garrity, followed by Julie Turner.
Since I was already here, I think I'd talk again, so anyway. I'd like to talk about the idea of putting bike lanes on Pine Street. I think it's a great idea. I use Pine Street just about every day. I use the bike lanes all the time. All my biking friends use the bike lanes. I run on the bike lanes. We run on the bike lanes. We feel safer with the bike lanes there. The streets look much neater with it, much more organized. Everybody should know where they're supposed to be. Scooters are using them. I hope we can fix that on Pine Street. I think it'll slow down traffic too. As far as the buffer zone, that came about, believe it or not, I actually remember when that came about. The bike lanes didn't have the buffer zone when they first came out. The buffer zones came out from a bike accident in UNH, at UNH, when I believe it was a professor. The bike lane was just a few days old, and somebody opened the door and he got killed. That's why you have I think it's a 2 foot, maybe 3 foot buffer lane, so it's important to put that in. So it's safer all around, and I hope you would all consider a bike lane on Pine Street. Thank you.
Julie Turner, followed by Greg Sullivan.
Good evening. Tonight, I would like to remind everyone, let me go back. Julie Turner, 285 Ray Street, Manchester. Tonight, I'd like to remind everyone that Manchester School District is the most diverse district in the state and has historically been one of the lowest funded on a per pupil basis. That is still the case today, despite increased appropriations from the state. Additionally, our city schools are home to 60 different languages and some of the most unique student needs in the state. Specifically, we have a special education population that makes up 23% of our student body and a multilingual learner population that makes up 20%. Remember, our city is obligated to provide a free and adequate public education for all students, including those with extraordinary challenges and expenses. It is difficult to do that with the mayor's proposed budget for the district, with a $9.5 million decrease for our city schools in what was unanimously voted upon at the Board of School Committee for fiscal year 26. I implore you all tonight to reconsider the proposed allocation to the district. Please allow the 4.27% increase in tax revenue allowable by the tax cap instead of the mayor's suggested 0.85% and appropriate a complete and fair budget to the district. Please consider funding the budget in the full amount of $246 million. A few weeks ago, I worked on numbers independently and passed along some of those thoughts as starting points for discussion among some of you. I appreciate the time that some of you took to consider those numbers and ask the important questions. With those figures, I suggested that in your discussions you consider allowing the district to retain around $5 million above what the mayor's budget suggested, allowing Manchester School District to include in its budget the following: $90,090 to continue the growth of our athletic programs, $1,633,000 to retain 25 and a half teaching positions of the 38 that will collapse under attrition, $481,834 to keep 4 district-level positions. Manchester School District is actually already understaffed for a district our size, as most departments are a department of 1 at the district level. $342,000 in transportation that would allow keeping a 1.4-mile walking radius and not charging for high school students to pay and ride the bus. And then a $3 million retention in our rainy day funds / trust funds to maintain suggested amounts recommended by our auditor.
30 seconds.
I want you to remember the 60 people that came here to speak 2 weeks ago in favor of a better, stronger budget for the Manchester School District. And I want you to imagine, if you can, a student returning here in 5, 6, 7 years to thank you for their successes in our city schools because of a budget you fully funded, not in spite of a budget. Thank you.
Greg Sullivan, followed by Daniel Pye.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. My name is Greg Sullivan. My office address in Manchester is 240 Bedford Street, and I'm currently serving as the president of the New England First Amendment Coalition. Mark Haywood has already spoken. Mark is a member of our New Hampshire committee. Our organization is comprised of journalists, attorneys, academics, and activists, and people who just love the First Amendment. It is the opinion of the New England First Amendment Coalition that your current Rule 3 is not constitutional. I will say that here in New Hampshire, the Constitution protects free speech in an even stronger fashion than does the First Amendment. Our free speech is sacrosanct. And the Supreme Court of the United States, in the case of Texas v. Johnson, and I wrote this in a letter to you all on April 15th, Supreme Court has said that if there is a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment, it is that the government may not prohibit expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. Simply put, the First Amendment protects the speech that we hate. And I can give you examples from across the country and from the Supreme Court where there is vulgarity that's been protected. We certainly, as a coalition, do not condone it. We hope that it is never a problem for this board or the mayor, but to me, it is a matter of constitutional law, that the government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society or the government finds that idea or that speech offensive or disagreeable. I would suggest that NEFAC's recommended language, which starts off, speakers are encouraged to be civil in their language and presentation, is a constitutional rule that still gives this board, as Mr. Haywood said, the ability to remove a person whose conduct is disorderly, for example, but not because of a word that they use. A woman who spoke earlier said that people have told her to blank herself or blank
30
off.
seconds.
And that's respectful, and that's what we hope citizens of Manchester will continue to be. But as currently standing, Rule 3 will not pass constitutional muster. Thank you all.
Daniel Pye, followed by Chris Potter.
Hello, my name is Daniel Pye, and I am a law professor at the University of New Hampshire. I teach constitutional law, and I am speaking in favor of the amendment to Rule 3. So as it stands, my expert opinion is that the rule as it currently is written is unconstitutional. It's true that this is what's called a limited public forum, which gives you some latitude to control the speech that is expressed here. But it still requires a legitimate government purpose, and a blanket ban on profanity and vulgarity and incivility most likely exceeds that. It's difficult being a constitutional law professor these days because everybody's asking me to predict what the court would do, and that's always a fraught exercise. But I think that I'm fairly confident that if this rule were tested, it would be found unconstitutional by the federal courts. But quite apart from whether or not something is unconstitutional or not, I think the First Amendment is more than just a rule of how to make laws and what laws states are permitted to make. It expresses something more fundamental. It's something about the spirit of the country and the idea that we value freedom, and in particular, the freedom of expression. And so even if it were that the rule could survive constitutional scrutiny, you should still amend the law because it is in the spirit of an open liberal democracy where speech is welcomed that we should invite the kinds of speech that we find offensive or that we find problematic. I mean, it's interesting to me when I teach for the First Amendment in classrooms. A lot of times, my students will say, "Well, I believe in free speech. I very much believe in free speech, but within limits." And it always strikes me as being somewhat ironic that they don't see the dissonance between saying that there's a limit to it. This is an easy vote for you, I think. I recognize that you're faced with a lot of very difficult problems, budgets that you can't make the numbers square. But here, this is costless. It's very easy to vote in favor of the Constitution, in favor of freedom, and against arbitrary, prudish reservations about what people say. And,
30 seconds.
Yeah, and it seems to me that you still retain control to maintain order and decorum here, and the proceedings might be a little bit more entertaining if you allow a little bit of vulgarity. So, thank you very much. I urge you to vote in favor of the amendment.
Chris Potter.
Good evening, Chris Potter, 470 Silver Street in Manchester. I understand you guys have on the agenda tonight the contracts on the city side. It's going to be a significant increase in spending, and I get it. You guys have inflation the same as we do. On the school district side, labor, insurance, utilities, they're all up inflation. And the budget we sent you, $246 million, doesn't include everything we need. It's very important that we get social workers, a second social worker at all the middle schools, for example, but we can't do it. We don't have unlimited money. No, we're asking the people to pay into our schools. But we're doing everything we can under the tax cap to give our students the best education we can. We've reduced class sizes. We got a major federal grant for behavioral health, addresses bullying. We've updated our curriculum and supported it with professional development. We've brought the transit in-house. And you see the results. Test scores are up. Sports participation is up. Graduation is up. We've got to let Dr. Camille do her job with the resources the team needs to educate our kids well. We've got a great superintendent, great teachers. We've got to give them the resources to actually educate the students. The mayor's budget would have made kids, walk, cancel middle school sports, and I understand enough of you are willing to support a little more for schools, and that's good. But I want to say, even if you were to give us half of our allocation and not the other half, it means we can leave transit and athletics alone, but we've still got to make up the gap somewhere. We're either reducing the cleaning level in the schools, we're making teachers buy their own supplies, we're using one-time funds and going under 10% of our budget in rainy day funds, or we've got teacher and district reductions. So every $1 million that you either give us or don't give us
30
is
seconds.
equal to the salary for 17 teachers. So every little bit makes a difference. And like Mackenzie said, I want the teacher of her extracurriculars to be back next year. Because if that teacher isn't, there's no replacement unless you fund the schools. Thank you.
That concludes our list of speakers, Your Honor.